Well, I'm going to get started. So you guys can all see my screen okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. So yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to the first Kent Digital Meetup Maidstone of 2021. I can't believe how quickly it's gone actually. Our last KDM that we were involved with was the Christmas special. And so I remember back then, today's session seemed like quite a long way off, but the last few weeks have certainly flown by. Those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Rich Dean. I'm the founder and creative director of Supersonic Playgrounds. We're a WordPress specialist web design agency based here in Maidstone. Tonight I'm joined from my team by Chantel and Lindsay, and they're going to be helping to make sure that the event runs smoothly. So tonight's theme is all around cybersecurity. I'm really excited by what our speaker's going to be covering. I think we met with the guys last week, some really interesting topics. Obviously, cybersecurity is quite a big topic in general at the moment. Doesn't really matter what business you're in. Being aware of potential threats is really important. So just in terms of tonight's schedule, so in a moment, we're going to do, after I've done my intro here, we're going to be trying something new. We're going to do an introduction section. So we're going to go around the room, or the virtual room, and it's going to be an opportunity for everyone to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you work, what you do, and what brings you here to today's session. And we'll also invite you to leave your contact details in the chat once you've done your intro. 6 p.m, slightly unscheduled, but as some of you may have seen in the news this week, sadly, Captain Tom Moore, the gentleman who raised almost 33 million for the NHS last year, has sadly passed away this week. I know Boris Johnson has scheduled a 1-minute clap across the country today. So we'll be joining in that. It felt disrespectful for us to not be doing that. So we'll make sure that we do that to show our respects for a minute at 6 o'clock. Once you've done that, we've got our co-host, who's Catherine Aleppo from Aston, Lark, who are one of the top 5 independent chartered insurance brokers in the country. Catherine's going to give us a bit of a brief intro around cybersecurity, how it relates to insurance. And then at 6:05, we'll be hearing from the first of our speakers today, who's Matt Lewis from CFC Underwriting. So Matt's going to be talking to us about how the UK cyber market has changed during the coronavirus pandemic, and why the principles behind cybercrime are so lucrative, and what cyber insurers are doing to stay ahead of the hackers. After Matt's talk, we're going to have a short break around about 6:30 to 6:40, so we can all get up, stretch our legs, get some refreshments. At 6:40, we'll then be followed by our second speaker, who's Amy Payne from Kent Police, who will be exploring the current cyber threats, how to protect your business, and other useful resources about cybersecurity. We're going to be saving questions till the end, so let's just make sure that we have our break on time. So any questions you might have, please hold them till the end of the presentations. That should be around about sort of 7:05 tonight, round up in the QA session, and then we'll look to probably close between sort of 7:05 and 7:20. So we won't keep you too late from your evenings tonight. As always, we always like to hear your feedback, and Chantel's created an online survey as well, and she'll be sharing the link to that in the chat. If you could please spare a couple of minutes at some point just during the session just to complete that survey. Chantel's just posted that then, so that'll just be really helpful just to make sure that we're getting the best. We're making sure that these events are really good for you guys and everyone's getting the best out of it. So that's all from me. So I'm going to hand over now to Catherine Aleppo from Aston Lark, who's going to do a sort of a 5-minute talk before we then hand over to Matt Lewis from CFC Underwriting. So, Catherine, over to you.
Hi, yeah, as I say, really, the reason I'm here today is because as the fastest growing cyber broker in the UK, we offer sound advice every day to businesses like yours about how to ensure they've got the support and the protection in place for when the worst happens. Ultimately saving businesses time, money, and all importantly, protecting the brand reputation you've worked so hard to build. With businesses increasingly relying on technology now, the risk of losing money and data, or your technology being denied or failing due to accidental or malicious interference, it's just never been greater. Regardless of the "it'll never happen to me" way of thinking, a cyber incident can and does disrupt organisations of all sizes across all industries, causing reputational harm, operational downtime, financial loss, and legal action potentially. Picture this: your building's on fire. You call the fire brigade. They put it out for you. They make the area safe, and then you claim on your fire insurance, and that covers the costs to rebuild it. And you could, under your traditional business interruption, that covers your loss of revenue, your loss of profit, all the while your business can't operate. But I would put to you that you think you're in the digital age. You're far more likely now to suffer a cyber attack than you are a fire. But who have you got there? Ask yourselves and your businesses, who is your emergency service for when you suffer a breach, or you're faced with an extortion demand, or an employee's fallen victim to a social engineering scam? Who have you got there? Who's going to cover your loss of revenue all the while you can't operate without your technology? That's the sort of things now, it's imperative, it's vital that all businesses are considering how, the extent of the risk and the impact it would have if you stripped away all of your technology. It's not just about, we don't hold sensitive data. You need to be thinking about how much you rely on technology and really the impact if it was all taken away from you. You come into work and suddenly you can't access it. I'm in no doubt that as business owners, you all invest in implementing, security controls, or you outsource to third parties. But I'm also in no doubt that there are no absolutes in risk management. No matter how robust your IT protocols are, you simply will not stop humans making mistakes, be it clicking on a malicious link, emailing an attachment to the wrong recipient, transferring money to a fraudster. But what you can do is take measures to minimise the impact to your business from the losses occurring from it. So hopefully, if it goes to plan, you should have my contact details should be showing on some of the slides. So you connect with me on LinkedIn. We share a lot of advice, simple best practices to take. If you want to find out about the right insurance cover for you, get in touch with me during the break or send me your details, and obviously, we can catch up afterwards. Equally, if you do already think you have an element of cyber cover in your protection that you've already got, I'm more than happy to take a look at it. Believe me, there are so many policies out there that are not fit for purpose. And once you've listened to both of the speakers, if you're in any doubt that you're not sure as to what you've got right for what you need, please do get in touch, and I'll be more than happy to talk you through, give you my thoughts on that. So anyway, guys, that's really it from me. As I say, I'm here to help. Get in contact any way you want to. But I hope you find the next two sessions interesting. I'm sure you will. So really, that's for me. I'll hand over to Matt.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Catherine. That's great. Right, I'm just going to get onto the presentation. Make sure everyone can see. Can everyone see my screen? Is the first thing. Can everyone see that? Everyone all good?
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's the first bit. Technology's working for starters, which is always good to know. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for your time this evening. So just kind of give you another kind of brief intro about myself and my work. So I'm Matt Lewis. I'm an insurance underwriter, specifically just for cyber. And I've been doing that for CFC in our London office for the last 4 years almost now. I've specialised in cyber in those last 4 years. I previously worked for Allianz and actually in Maidstone as well back in the day. So I've kind of been in insurance for a while now. Kind of wanted to kind of speak to you today and just kind of go over a few elements that we're looking at. Just kind of give you a bit of background on CFC as well. CFC have been writing cyber insurance now for 20 years. We started up in 1999 when kind of the dot-com boom started, and as you can imagine, not many people were kind of buying cyber at that time. Now we've actually got kind of over 60,000 customers globally, which makes us, if not definitely in the top two global insurers of cyber insurance, which isn't bad for a company that only had when I started 150 employees. So we've grown massively since then. We've actually got 50 underwriters purely doing cyber underwriting. and I've got a specialist kind of instant response team and claims handlers, which has got 73 of us now, with kind of instant response teams across the world, as well as in the UK. Just to kind of give you an idea of who CSC are if you haven't heard of us. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about today is these learning objectives. So understand how the UK cyber market has drastically changed throughout the whole COVID-19 pandemic, and some of the trends that we've kind of see continue and actually accelerate. Learn the principles behind why cybercrime is so lucrative. Understand the two major cyber events that are keeping us up at night at the moment, especially at the moment, kind of rolling, tossing and turning. And discover what cyber insurers are doing to stay ahead of the hackers. Okay, that's kind of just to give you a real idea, kind of what we're going to kind of talk about today. So, kind of, swiftly moving on, we're going to go into kind of what's going on basically. So, over the last few years, we've seen a lot of objections to businesses kind of purchasing cyber insurance, and as you can see from the graphic, here are some of the most common ones that we see, but are they still relevant today? That's really the message here. So 2020 was already a year we know saw fundamental changes to every element of society, including the running of our businesses, and with these cyber instances were no different at all. If anything, the fact that now many of us are working from home en masse, and now the growing resilience of the world becoming more technological has made an increased strain on people's businesses. Threat actors, or hackers, what we'll call them for the presentation, mainly because it's easier, have capitalised basically on these changes. This graphic here shows the rise in the last 3 financial years at CFC. As you'll be able to see from the graphic year on year, we've seen that there's been a big increase in the frequency of incidents that we see yearly. This is very much the case across the global insurance market, but outside of this, there goes many thousands of instances that are not recorded because only 10% of businesses actually only buy cyber insurance. Now, the main change, however, is not the frequency, but actually the severity. This graphic is from one of the world leaders in dealing with ransomware incidents. It shows the severity of claims is the biggest change. Not only are we seeing far more claims than ever, but you can actually see the average ransomware payment is now 20 times higher and is continuing to rise. But the real question here is, why is that happening? Crime is moving with the times, and it's now far easier, safer, and more importantly for the hacker, more lucrative to commit various forms of cybercrime compared to traditional crime. But again, why is this the case that it's easier, safer, and more lucrative? Well, one of the main reasons is weak passwords and quick ways to make money. While people may sell access to people's various subscription services such as Netflix or Spotify, where the real money can be found is people's personal details and then selling these online. But how do they get these? Quite often, the case is they get this information by infiltrating businesses' networks and taking any personal data that they can find, be it that of employees or any, no matter how little data, customer or client data. They can gain access to kind of business networks and systems because they're able to kind of guess administrator or employee passwords. And still in this day and age, people will still use a lot of simple passwords, such as the above. We regularly see examples as the ones on the screen, just because sometimes people forget. Again, that's what Catherine was saying earlier. Human error does play a massive part in what happens, and sometimes people just forget to change the password from the normal admin. They can actually do this as well by using software which essentially goes through the top collated common passwords. And in most cases, normally this means they'll be able to access the business IT networks. Kind of to try and highlight this point, we have an example of a client of ours at CFC who suffered a breach of their network, which led to a ransomware attack. This client was an engineer with a turnover of £400,000. While they didn't have much in the way of third-party customer or client data, What they do have is their operational data, the drawings, contracts, HR information, and all other elements that are vital to their operations as a business. They're able via an open RDP port or remote desktop protocol. So I think a lot of you probably, if you're connected to your networks and remotely, like I do, when working from home, you use RDP ports to access your systems. So essentially what they did is once they found that there's an open port, again, this is something that's very, very easy to do. You can actually go onto a website at any one time. You can actually find up to 5 million open RDP ports. And I'm going to talk about a little bit more about those in a little bit. Once they found this open port, they found the administrator's account on the network and were able to do what was essentially what we call a brute force attack by trying multiple passwords until they found the right one. Once onto the network, the hacker was actually able to install ransomware onto their network, and this meant that all their data, this business, had now been encrypted and was totally inaccessible. To make matters worse, the client did not have any backups that were offline, i.e., they weren't connected to the rest of the rest of the network, sorry. And as such, the backup was also encrypted. I mean, there's actually no way for them to simply use their backups to kind of get operational again. There was also ransom demands, the threat that there's personal information may be released if they did not pay the ransom. And this is a trend that we're increasingly seeing at the moment, where they're actually stealing data and then threatening to release that as well. In this case, the ransom was not paid here, but instead we work with the client to actually recreate their lost data, not just restore it. We actually paid to help recreate it. We provided IT forensics to kind of help rebuild the system and checked whether any third-party data had actually been indeed breached. And we were able to provide legal assistance to ensure all legislation had been followed using law firms with a wealth of experience in cyber instances. As well as providing all this help, and most importantly, is that we were able to cover the business interruption loss for this client, as they were out of action for 2 full weeks before they started to look like they were going to get back to normal. These 2 weeks have cost them as a business, and as a result, with our policy, we actually cover reputational damage as well, which was linked to this. All in all, as you can see, this was an incident for a normal business, which after all the work was done and the costs for getting third-party assistance, their loss to their businesses and also the business interruption and the cost to recreate the data led to a £200,000 loss, which we're able to cover for this client. I think this is a really great example of our cyber insurance policy can assist clients in ensuring businesses can continue to trade after suffering such events, given the severity of cyber instances are very much on the rise. Just to put that into a wider perspective, you think about the fact that that was a £200,000 loss for a company that only turns over £400,000 a year. That would have been absolutely catastrophic. And that company in particular, we're actually very, very thankful that their broker advised them about cyber nice and early. And I can actually say that 2 years after this incident actually occurred, they're still operational, they're still running, they're still very, very thankful that they took their broker's advice and actually picked up a cyber policy. Now, moving on to other reasons why hackers are seeing cybercrime as easy, safer, and lucrative is that of human error, and in the form of employee awareness and training. Now, 78% of all cyber claims actually occur due to the factor of human error. Now, that means while you might have the best computer security in the world, the weakest link in any plan is still human error. Employee training on what to look out for is something we see a lot of us as a basic training, but what not to click on or what to avoid. However, what we're seeing is sophisticated engineering phishing campaigns, using situations such as coronavirus, relying on people's fear of the virus to want to know more. We've even seen simpler things such as vouchers for Costa and other coffee chains, because realistically, who doesn't like free stuff? And they often will disguise a name on the email address as well to appear as if it's coming from a legitimate company. I'm sure you've all seen Amazon or Netflix, and you haven't got your payment hasn't gone through. Very common. These types of events can actually lead to passwords being stolen, as they enter the usernames and passwords, install ransomware onto networks, and in some occasions then access networks directly, leading to cyber events like the example just now. One of the trends that we're also seeing many of our clients and other businesses without cyber which is on the rise, and many are actually unintended victims of cyber instances. As an example of this, there was a cyber attack on Blackboard. Some of you might recognise the name. They're actually one of the largest kind of cloud software providers in the world, which they actually provide a whole host of companies globally with some solutions. They had their own networks breached, and this led to hundreds of their clients suffering a data breach as their data was made accessible to others. We know from our own clients that 125 organisations had to report that data breach, which occurred to, and that's all has to go to the ICO, who govern GDPR regulations in the UK. And this actually included 33 charities, because realistically, as Catherine was alluding to earlier, these hackers don't always know who they're actually targeting. As you can see, this kind of shows that purely by outsourcing your IT does not eliminate the risk that kind of businesses face. Our three most common forms of cybercrime are ransomware, business email compromises, i.e. people getting into email accounts, and social engineering, so cybercrime or funds transfer fraud. This leads to like various different issues. As you can imagine, people don't want to lose money. Phishing emails like those we saw on the last slide are often sent to thousands of email addresses on the basis they are likely to get at least a few individuals fall for it. This then leads to kind of harvesting of passwords, and then obviously once they've got passwords, you get the installation of ransomware, emails made to look like legitimate invoices, which we've seen quite a lot of. People were actually taking PDF invoices, just editing the bank details very, very cleverly, and everything else is legitimate, or even just kind of falsifying payment requests, or in fact, doing what a lot of people call CEO fraud, impersonating like a senior member of a business just to get money funds to transfer. When it clicks, there we go, cool. As you can see this from this graphic, they will literally target any industry or organisation, regardless trade, size, or perceived exposure. So what can a cyber policy do for you? It can be your kind of digital fire engine to come to put the fire out of a cyber incident to keep you and your business moving forward. So when a cyber event happens though, what do you need access to? Oh, when it clicks, sorry, give me 2 seconds. It's a little bit delayed. There we go, cool. At CFC in particular, we provide a single point of contact to be able to project manage the incident and make sure the right people are on hand to get you back up on your feet as quickly as possible. Kind of most PI policies, which some businesses rely on, at least them actually eroding their limit. Quite often they're in the aggregate, for example, leaving the purchase limit, leaving them exposed themselves, because if they do have like a PI incident, and the likelihood is their PI is going to increase in terms of the renewal premium, plus you've also lost out on potential limits if you do have a loss. A cyber policy is obviously designed to help you, even if there's no wrongful act done by you. And as we've seen from the instance noted, quite often you're an unintended victim, or just a victim in general, without having done actually anything wrong. You'll be able to cover theft of funds from social engineering and the theft of data on one specialist policy. And also importantly, as part of a cyber policy, we provide access to fantastic kind of risk management tools. Currently, we provide various different services. If you buy a policy with CSC, for example, we actually give the equivalent of £10,000 worth of risk management tools. We provide a lot of advice and assistance in helping you kind of manage your kind of business cyber exposure as well. As you can see from the lovely graphic as well on the screen, we've actually brought out a brand new cyber app, and what we're going to be using that for is actually being able to provide some proactive risk management services. We've currently been doing a couple of campaigns. One of the ones we've been doing recently is we're doing the same checks that hackers do in terms of looking for the open remote desktop protocols. All they do is go into this kind of website. You can go on there, search, and all they do is literally will take a batch. And then, as I said earlier on, they're unintended victims and people just attempt to attack them, see which ones are vulnerable. We're actually going on to those same kind of sites and are actually finding any of our clients and then letting them know they are potentially going to be a victim. It's something that we're proactively trying to do, try and protect our clients, and we've actually been able to contact over 1,500 of our clients already just in the UK to try and hopefully prevent a cyber incident. We had a few more emails go out today to several other clients because we actually discovered that there had actually been a breach of their data because we'd found that there was usernames, passwords that were attempted to be sold in the dark web today. So we actually sent out several notifications to our clients just to maybe change their passwords, ensure that all their clients are aware if one, just do some initial checks, and obviously provide any advice if they need it. So I think cyber insurance is not just an insurance policy to rely on kind of after the event, where the way things are going, we're actually developing into a company that can actually provide proactive help as well. And I think that's the biggest thing when you're looking at cyber policy now. Don't look at it as just insurance. It's a full service product. It's risk management. It's advice. And that's kind of why we work with Aston Lark as well. So from me, I just want to say kind of a big thank you for having your time this evening. I know I've rattled through that quite a lot. Obviously, you've only got kind of a short time period to kind of get into this. But if you do want to find out any more information, please do feel free to speak to Catherine or any of the members of the team at Aston Lark. We do work very closely together. The guys have got, you've got a few of the guys that kind of come up to brush up their knowledge. They're still very, very knowledgeable about the subject. I'm sure they'll be able to help you. Much like them, CFC, we've got plenty of resources on our website. I'll put a link in the group in a minute if you want to find it. But our resources page, we've got kind of 25 kind of case examples from all different trades and sectors to have a look over. We've even did a recent article about 6 things that we love. I definitely recommend about that if you just wanted to kind of maybe look at how you could potentially protect yourself as well. Oh, there we go. Chantel's done it. Fantastic. Saved me a job. Thank you very much. But hope that was found that useful. I know, like I said, I know I rattled through that a little bit because of time period. I could probably talk about the subject for a good hour and a half, but there'll be a bit of a Q&A at the end. So if you want to ask any questions, please do feel free to kind of write some down and ask me about later on. But thank you very much, everyone. That's me for now.
Elaine.
Yeah, can I just say, I find Instagram full of predators. I don't know if they target me because I'm a woman and I'm in the beauty industry, but 4 people a day, men particularly, are actually, trying to chat you up. They have one post typically, and they're following about 200 women.
Yep.
So you know immediately from that they're predators. And the other thing that I found today, there were like 4 Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Prince Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, would Prince Andrew want to follow me? No.
you can report them, so you can report the pages. Yeah. So, and to be honest, I mean, I suppose if you've got a business and you've kind of, obviously one of the things we sort of say is kind of look at your privacy settings, but if that is your business, it's obviously you need to have that open platform, but it'd just be a case of just reporting them and blocking them, and that's really all you can do with those types of issues.
I think it's more prevalent on Instagram than on any of the other platforms that I'm on.
TikTok is renowned for it as well.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'll stay away from that one then.
Well, it's more because of the children's side of things, but we won't go into that. So
okay.
Yeah.
It's stressful, isn't it, when you think, I mean, there's so many entry points. We're pretty hot at, sometimes they're going, we're pretty hot in IT, but like you say, it's always down to the end user, and particularly for me, when we were in our office last year, it was controlled. I had all of our office IT equipment in front of me. I know exactly where everyone's computer is. It's actually quite stressful now that all the guys are working from home, is, making sure the software's up to date, making sure that people have got, firewall settings enabled,
Effectively, like everyone that's working from home is effectively like another office. That it's hard enough to implement and maintain, network infrastructure when you're all in one location, because keeping up with the making sure the configuration's correct, keeping up with the patching, just in one place. Yet you now got multiple effectively offices where you're having to do that and rely on the end user to make sure they're playing their part too. It's just. I find that after I've spoken to clients, they're sort of shocked, and it's a bit like, oh, sleep well. You know, we don't want to, you're not wanting to scare people, but you have to be realistic. You have to be real and tell people what's happening. And then, as a business owner, it's totally somebody else. You know, it's their business decision. But as long as it's informed, and it can't be informed unless we've talked to people about and really kind of highlighted what is going on. You know, it is a real and present danger, and unfortunately, people just cannot be burying their head in the sand anymore, or expecting IT switch it on, switch it off to deal with it. It's just bigger than that now.
On one hand, you want to kind of, we've got, I don't know, there's 8 of us, we're not a massive company, but everyone's on Macs, iMacs, or laptops, or MacBook Pros, MacBook Airs. And it's a bit like, well, you know, when I do a fresh install, you know, I always do the fresh install myself, my team, and I turn on the firewall settings. We've got Norton antivirus, we've got stuff on it to make it secure. They get, you know, Lindsay's had probably the most recent new laptop. She's got the new installation about 2 weeks ago. But then some of our guys, their machines were last wiped and reinstalled a year and a half ago. On the one hand, you want to keep the top level admin access to yourself and just give them user level access. On the one hand, if you only give them user level access, how they're meant to keep the software up to date and update to the latest Mac OS and make sure the software is installed. And obviously, it's not really practical for me to VPN in or pipe into their machine and do it remotely, because I haven't got, you know, how can I practically do that? You can't, whenever I do that installation, you put the machine to one side, do it in isolation, and working on something else. So it's really hard to manage.
I think, and that's what we're seeing from like our statistics as well. Since obviously people are obviously working from home, all it's meant is that if there's millions more potential victims. Whereas before, a lot of people on internal networks, they've actually can manage it. This means there's so many more vulnerability points, and that's why things like open RDP ports are such a big thing. Like obviously, everyone was working from home when the government said. So you think about it, even if you're outsourcing your IT, if an IT company's got 100 clients, there's 100 clients they had to then immediately get on to work from home and get set up, and a lot of businesses weren't set up for that. And while these guys obviously they don't mean to be incompetent, they don't mean to think, but they can still make a mistake and not secure it. And even over time, like we've even seen people over time they've had where people are having to go into the office, out of the office, we're in and out in lockdown, we're out of lockdown. It's created this problem where we're seeing people open like the RDP ports, which then causing these cyber events, causing ransomware, causing data breaches, causing cybercrime losses. And I think it's just accelerated the process. Obviously, cybercrime is increasing as it is. But COVID's actually been perfect for hackers, really. It's been like the perfect storm for them, and they've just taken full advantage of it. And not only the fact that this happens, but the fact that they're getting very, very good at it. And I think that, like Amy was saying, you're getting kind of guys as young as 10 years old who can do this now. It's easy to do. If you really, really wanted to, you can go onto the dark web and buy a ransomware kit for 300 quid. And you even get a call center to ring up if you don't know how to use it. So like anyone can do it. Like it's so safe, it's so easy to do now. And there's not really tons that you can do. Like you can protect yourself. Amy's giving loads of really great advice. Obviously, we've got some fantastic resources as well, and I'll put a link up to some of the things that we talk about, and Aston Lark as well can help with that as well. But I just think it's just we kind of do need to scare people to some extent, because people need to kind of wake up and smell the coffee a little bit.
Can I just say one of the things I often tell my wife and kids and people I work with, and it usually makes them sit up and listen, is there's probably 3 million people just the other side of your firewall want your money or something off of you, and they're smarter than you. So you just got to bear that in mind. Some of the things that's happened in my company and those various companies I've had experiences of are really quite sophisticated. Scams, like the one Amy was saying about the forwarding people's emails, the rules. We had one guy where we had one that's a very popular one apparently, where one of the senior bosses had their account hacked because his password was something stupid, but we won't get into that. But it's always the bosses where the passwords are stupid. And his account was. Then it put a forwarding rule that bounced off the CFOs. So it bounced out all the CFOs' emails to trash. So that, and then it and then they must have gone into a PDF and overlaid a different set of bank details and sent it to the CFO that said, please pay this invoice. So when he sent it back saying, are you sure you want it paid? It was like, whoa, it's quite a sophisticated one. I was impressed. I clapped. I thought, yeah, that's pretty good going, but we didn't fall for it, but it's good going.
We did have we didn't get hacked, but Chantel, remember Chantel, you had that from me about, it was in the old, it was after you started, but in the old office, Chantel was getting she thought was from me telling her to do something. And no, I didn't send, she's like text me going, did you just send me this email about paying for something? I'm like, no, didn't send you that, that's a scam.
But that's what they'll do. But once they're in, they can sit in your inbox, monitor the traffic, copy. Look at how you talk to people in the finance department, whether you shorten their name or the sort of language that you use in your email. And then they've got access to the calendar, so they know if you're on holiday. They know they've looked at your social media. They know what you normally do. So they make these emails so sophisticated and. If you send them on a Friday afternoon, everyone's got to meet, especially if you're working from home. You've got your pets, kids, Amazon man, you've got everything going on. And it goes back to being human, we make mistakes. And that is unfortunately not just the other one of technology, but that is just never going to stop, sadly.
So one quite recently sophisticated one that we picked up on is, and we did report it actually to the police somewhere, I can't remember what we reported, where domains can now have Unicode characters in them. So you could have an email that is from, I don't know, somebody important at HSBC Bank, except the S is not a real letter S. It's a Greek letter S, but you look at it, it looks like a letter S. So it's there's really sophisticated scams coming out like that. They're really quite, good, well thought of, but not gonna fall for it. But
And it's also like configuring, changing default settings. We see that a lot as well. I was reading that Nissan had an attack on one of their servers recently because they'd left the default setting as admin. Admin and credentials were just admin, and it's just like. People think that just because you've got this software and it's out of the box, that automatically it's okay, we're fine. But unless you actually go in there and configure it and restrict the privileges and change the passwords, change the default settings to what your company actually needs, again, you're just sort of massively leaving yourselves exposed.
Another shocker with passwords actually is a website what I built a couple of years back. I actually downloaded the 3,000 or 10,000 passwords most used, and just called people an idiot outright if they tried to set their password to that one of those stupid ones, and I actually got it to log me, and it was quite shocking how many people would make their password football or 1 2 3 4 5. It's shocking, and you just look at it and go, my God, the people are really that stupid.
And deactivating old accounts is the other thing that people don't do. Whether past employees leave or, unfortunately, if they die, unless you deactivate their accounts, they can still be exploited because nobody's logging onto those accounts every day. So you don't necessarily know if somebody is sort of sat in there and use that as a way to get in. There's just so many things to think about that, just for peace of mind. Get help, utilize the support that's out there, if nothing else. The last thing you want to do is have to search around for money and help and advice when you're in the middle of this sort of thing. It's just a panic, and you just don't need it.
Also as well, think about as well, like least privilege, so kind of taking away access to staff that don't give access to the whole network, when actually obviously they need access to a certain amount of files, because actually one of the things that we see is that especially in the small companies, you give everybody access to absolutely everything in the network. Well, actually, if you start sectioning it off and only give them what they actually need access to, that's the way you're going to help protect yourselves as well. Because obviously, a cyber criminal can only get to a certain point. If they're attacking an employee, it's going to be stopped at that point. They're not going to get as far as they want to. So it's a really good thing to look at in your company to see who's got access and do they need access to it. So And just on the point of, passwords and default passwords, I mean, we've had recently a hacking of a baby monitor, which was awful when they were talking to the baby through the monitor. So, it happens all the time, and it's something that's quite scary, and I'm seeing it on a daily basis. So it's just really important that we look at those sorts of things as well as in work life, but home life as well.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And also the systems, like we're all using Zoom at the moment, and we trust that these systems are secure. I actually heard of someone that I knew personally, they were using TeamViewer, which is a similar sort of platform. It's more for short screen sharing, but it's not. This hacker hacked into TeamViewer, and the guy who was using it, he was working all down his computer, had TeamViewer running in the background because he'd been sharing his screen or going on a video call. He went to have his lunch. The hackers could recognise. They weren't even watching. They just could tell that his mouse had stopped moving for a long period of time. They then hacked in, used his mouse to go on and hack into some quite important kind of files and websites and stuff. And yeah, scary stuff.
I've got a question for probably both Matt and Amy, and possibly Catherine as well. If you've been hit by a ransomware attack, should you pay the ransom?
So the advice is that obviously, if you're paying ransom, you're supporting organised crime.
That's the legal stance.
Yeah.
If you've been asked to pay a £30,000 ransom, for example, like the current rate of Bitcoin,
yep.
But actually that's going to cause millions of pounds of damage to your company.
Yep.
If you don't pay it, then I would be, I would want to pay that to avoid that huge damage. It could even put my company under.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. So, but then, so it is a really challenging question, and
yeah,
you either break the law or not break the law. But yeah. So I was just really interested to know how Amy and Matt, the two different views on this, I guess.
My stance is that obviously, if you pay it, I mean, obviously we aren't under the illusion that you're not going to pay it, because if they've got no other option other than pay to get your business back up and running, then obviously you're going to do that. You've got no backups and you've got no other option. Then we've had businesses that have done that because obviously they haven't got any other options. But obviously advice is you shouldn't pay the ransom, because there's no guarantee that they're actually going to give you anything back. It might be that they continue to exploit you and they continue to hit you with a cyber attack, and then you become a sucker. So you're on a sucker list because you've fallen victim to it, and they may exploit you again. So that's one of the things that I kind of am aware of. But also as well, from the other side, from the sort of ethical side, is you are supporting organised crime, and that's my stance on it. But obviously we don't necessarily have an opinion on it, because it's down to that individual.
Cool. I'll go from my kind of the insurance-y kind of sides. So the way we kind of look at it, and my CEO's like kind of one of the top guys of cyber globally, recently did a really good article, mainly in response to the kind of the Guardian article that Glenn might be actually referring to. And realistically, ransomware payments are very much, how we work it in an insurance point of view, is always the absolute last resort. Basically, we always look at it. And that's the point. When you've got insurance, you've got coverage to cover all the other elements. We've got things like system rectification costs. If it's going to cost a company a long period of time being out, obviously we'll cover that type of thing. But we do see scenarios whereby, like the scenario earlier in the example, they got rid of the backups. So there was nothing left. Sometimes we can sit there and say, okay, realistically, you could be out for 4 weeks for you to get back up operational. It's going to cost like 2 million quid to get you all your systems back and running. You've got to get your business back, contracts, other thing. They're asking for 15 grand in Bitcoin. All right, what do you want to do? Obviously, you've got the insurance, but you only covered up to, you only bought X limit, you only covered up to X limit. Sometimes, yeah, it is the financially viable choice. But I think what we do with that, if we do go down the route of do we pay it, I think one of the biggest things that we actually do at CFC, I know we do it. I don't know if all insurers do it, so I can't kind of say this, but one of the things we do is actually check things like sanctions lists. We actually go on, check if we can recognise, a lot of these groups are kind of the same groups over and over. You can spot what ones are kind of recognised sanctions lists. There's lists that the FBI and CIA in the UK put together and kind of recognises organised crime, terrorist organisations, groups shouldn't be paying. and we kind of check and we advise our clients, even if it's got to the point where it's more financially viable. We will often actually advise our clients not to pay the ransom, because they will be breaking some form of either UK, US, or some form of law. So, and we've had scenarios where we've said no, it's more financially viable, to pay the ransom, but don't do it. And our clients haven't done it, and we've gone down a much more expensive route of rectifying the systems. I think there's the argument of people saying, oh, well, cyber insurance is funding ransomware and why people are doing it. Myself and kind of CSE, and as my kind of director, Graham, kind of did his blog there just beginning of this week. I'll share it on my LinkedIn if anyone wants to fancy to read, but it's definitely worth a quick read. It's only like 5 minutes worth a read. But realistically, as we were talking about earlier, only kind of 15% of the world's businesses and only 10% of the UK actually buy cyber insurance. So realistically, even if it was kind of turned around and they said, right, you cannot no longer pay ransoms, it's totally illegal. So many people don't buy cyber insurance, or don't have any sort of backup, or they don't have any financial aid or anything like that. Realistically, are more people more likely to pay it? Then the answer is possibly yes. So is it technically insurance industry funding it, or is it kind of the vast majority of businesses that don't have it and they see the only option to kind of get themselves operational to pay it, feel pressured? And there's also that kind of stigma behind having a ransomware attack. A lot of people are worried about their reputation, and they think, well, if I go out and say, yeah, I've paid, if someone knows I've been out of operation, or I might lose customers, I'm going to have to pay this. That could happen. So I think there is the argument to pay and not pay. Obviously, like we said, hopefully we won't have to do that. But sometimes it can be necessary to some extent. Like I said, I think it's dealing with the right people and who know what they're doing. COVID, where we did our average kind of ransomware payment thing, they do all the checks, make sure we're kind of being as good as we can, make sure we're not trying to pay organised crime or terrorist organisations. But it's no foolproof way of doing it. There's no right or wrong answer. Ethically, you've got ethical answers, business answers. But I think it's up to that individual and that company to really make that decision based on the information they give it, and make an assessment, really. Unfortunately, it's like any sort of crime. Crime is going to go on whatever we do. Unfortunately.
Why punish the victim? You know, if you can't have the ransomware cover, if that's not available, that just means that the victim is being punished. But you know, and as you say, that's going to result in businesses just not being able to survive. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we'll see a lot more if it is made illegal, for example, and you can't cover any sort of ransomware or anything like that. You'll see hundreds of businesses go out of business because the ransom they're asking for now. As you see, the ransoms are well over 100 grand now, quite often, and a lot of time they're in cryptocurrency. And I guarantee that probably at least 3/4 of the people in this chat probably haven't got a clue how to obtain cryptocurrency and how to pay via cryptocurrency as well. So that's the ability to do that. The expertise is kind of quite limited, and that's why kind of those are the types of services that we kind of offer with our insurance policy, for example.
It's highly complex.
It is indeed. There's a lot going on.
I think. I was going to say. I think. You know, it's such a complex question. It's such a complex answer, and there is no black, white answer to that question. But I think the important point I stress to my clients is, make sure that you can mitigate against ransomware attacks by, incorporating everything that Amy and yourself have said, Matt. That you must put in place, good password hygiene. It's simple to implement, but people forget, but it's just simple stuff that we can do. We talk about sophisticated cyber attack, but actually 99.9% of them are not sophisticated. They are a playbook of attack scenarios. The only sophisticated one I can think of is the SolarWinds one, really. That's why I advise my clients that let's get yourself secure. Let's not have to worry about paying that ransomware, because you're not going to get hit by ransomware. That's my argument.
With ransomware, so a question I've got, I think actually Matt and Amy kind of spoke about this last week before we talk about cloud systems. Obviously, most people are on cloud-based systems, even if it's like Google Drive, Dropbox nowadays, which up until a little while ago were kind of deemed to be actually quite secure. Now even those systems are potentially vulnerable to ransomware. So it's quite interesting. I'm curious because we've been hailing kind of cloud-based systems for a long time as the future, and it's almost made kind of hard drive backups almost look archaic. But are we now saying actually one of the only ways you can truly protect yourself from something like this is to take a hard drive, have an external hard drive, using like a cloud-based system, plug an external hard drive into one of their main computers, one of the computers that's on that cloud system. Every now and again, periodically copy all the files onto a hard drive, disconnect that from your computer, and then if you are subject to ransomware, you would have to basically wipe your computer, reinstall, probably wipe everything that's on the cloud as well. Maybe if you've got Dropbox or Google Drive, plug in that hard drive and copy and paste the files across. And that's probably the only way to, as long as they haven't been infected, one of the only ways to get over it, I guess.
Yeah, potentially. I think I'm not sure Dan will agree. I think you need to have as many redundancy measures as possible. Like you can have cloud backups, you can have a physical backup. I think one of the main things is making sure that that's kind of either totally immutable as a new thing that people are talking about, whereby that backup can't be deleted. It's quite a good thing we're starting to see. Obviously having a physical copy as well, obviously not connected to the network. We're finding a lot of people are either just going onto the network, and a lot of people just have their backup saved in a random drive file, and people find that and just delete that. We've had loads of scenarios of that. And even linking to the cloud. So we've actually seen a lot of clients who haven't got any sort of VPN or firewall protecting access from the network into the cloud where they're saving the drives. And again, once they're either encrypting the whole network, it actually blocks their access to the clouds, or likewise, they haven't secured the access to the cloud. So all that happens is they follow the path into the networks and actually find them and delete them. So I think having your system set up in various ways, having an offline backup is always great to have. I think just so it's not there. Obviously, having 2 or 3 different ways you've backed up is always going to help. I think because you never know quite where the attack vector could happen, what type of attack it is. Like Glenn's saying, there's so many different variants of ransomware, and there's different levels of how they do it. They can affect different areas. So I think it's just having, okay, if this fails, I've got this. If this fails, I've got this. You go to plans A, B, and C. And I think that's the biggest thing with cyber security is, what plans have I got in place? How can I mitigate as much as possible? And once I've done that, kind of what can I do from there, and just kind of building from there. I think that's why having like an instant response plan for cyber in particular is a key thing, because it really takes you through a checklist, like the Amy's checklist. Any kind of IT professional can help with that. Something we provide as part of our services. Just having that knowledge of what to do and kind of how to set it up is key. I think that's the most important thing. Is just preparing for that rainy day event, if it does unfortunately happen. Because realistically, as much as you can protect with cybersecurity as much as possible, and I'm sure Glenn will probably maybe slightly disagree. You can't say there's 100% foolproof. There's no one's ever going to get in, because things change. But there's always someone like there's always someone clever. There's always someone who's going to be able to get around it. And there's always going to be that vulnerability that people find and exploit somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's all about mitigation. It's not about you can't become 100% protected, but it's about mitigating those risks. And what you said about the backup, it's really important to understand how far can your backups go in terms of where's your the point of recovery that you can go back to keep.
I ask, are you finding that like ransomware, if they implant ransomware on your systems, do they wait a certain period of time before they activate it? So actually, that's okay, I've got a backup from 2 days ago. Oh, actually, crap, that's got the ransomware on it as well. Do they have like a waiting period where they let it kind of go back into your backup schedule?
So possibly. So I mean, it depends on the ransomware that's being used. Some are, they're activated in a time zone, in a time after a time period. But I think most are active. I mean, one of the things that Amy touched on was that there's a lot of like kids that are doing this sort of stuff. They're not actually writing the code. They're using services such as ransomware as a service, or they're downloading code from maybe the dark web, maybe just from their friends, which actually has this code. So I don't think they're that sophisticated that are waiting 2 days to activate. But certainly you do need a backup policy that that covers a number of scenarios, and a backup is not a backup until you've restored it. Yeah, so practice that restoration. Don't just think I've backed up, I'm happy, I'm good. No, try restoring it again. See if it actually restores, because if you can't restore it, then it's not a backup.
Great. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Yeah, we see that a lot. I read that scenario. Got backups, fantastic, great, and then got to restore it, and only half the stuff's on there. So obviously that means that we're paying a lot more money to recreate a lot of lost data, that type of thing from our point of view. So yeah, I do agree. Testing, regular testing is one of the questions we actually ask all the time. I'm sure Catherine and Aston are probably bored of us asking, and we're saying, yeah, they've got backups, and we're going, cool, yeah, did they test it? Is it offline, that type of thing? So we ask those questions ourselves a lot. And you'll find probably only 50% of the time people are actually testing it, which is obviously, and then we're kind of like, cool, well, make sure you're now doing that, because that's also we're giving you terms on the basis that we're going to, hopefully you've got that in place going forward. So yeah, I do agree. I think there is things you can help mitigate it. But like I said, human error, someone might have forgot. We've had scenarios with clients they were doing cloud backups automatically and hadn't been working for 2-3 years, and they just kept clicking like the X in the corner, the little pop-up saying, oh, your backup storage is kind of expired or that type of thing, and they just weren't paying attention to it. The IT contractor wasn't the best and wasn't obviously telling them about it either. Yeah, they lost 3 years worth of stuff because they just were clicking the thing and the pop-up in the corner they weren't paying attention to. So unfortunately it does happen, but you can do as much as you can. You can try and mitigate as much as you can. And I think it's just trying to have that plan in place, know what you're doing, know who you got to speak to, and then taking it from there, really.
Yeah. All right, cool, good. It's gone 7:30, so I'm aware we're getting a little bit late. There's fantastic presentations and definitely food for thought. And I'm sure we're all going to go away and cry in a corner somewhere.
That wasn't the intention. That was not the intention.
Not because your presentations weren't very good. I think that's the stressful thing, isn't it? It's no matter how on top of it you are, I think probably the most stressful thing is you're constantly worried about what have I missed?
Yeah.
Where may they be? You know, where would we maybe getting exploited right now without even knowing about it? That's the stressful thing, isn't it? That's the scary thing.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
And have good insurance.
Does help.
Does help. Cool. Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for coming.
So say make sure you have relevant insurance as well. Sorry, I was going to say.
I will just share my last screen with everyone, so just so we can see this. So obviously this is the speakers today. Obviously you've got everybody's contact details, but if not, just ping us an email, ping Chantal an email, we can give those out to you. Yeah, upcoming events, we have got the 17th of February is the KDM Medway, which is run by our friends at Clockwork Moggy. The 3rd of March is the Ashford KDM, and that's run by our friends at 62 Design, or 62 Tech. And then we're back on the 17th of March. That'll be our next one there. So we'd love to see you all again. As we mentioned earlier, like I said, if you could take 2 minutes to fill out our survey, that would be absolutely fantastic. Chantal's got the link there. But yeah, apart from that, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll get everyone back. There we go. And we shall see you again next time.